Eric Patrick Clapton, born March 30th, 1945 in Ripley, Surrey, England, is a rock and blues icon. A man of extraordinary musical talent, but whose life was shrouded in deep sadness. Of all the pains he endured, from a lonely childhood to broken relationships to years of drug addiction, the greatest sorrow in Eric Clapton's life was none other than the tragic death of his son Connor in 1991. The loss was not only a terrible emotional shock, but also a wound that never healed, a shadow that haunted him for the rest of his life, seeping into every note and every word he composed. Connor Clapton, Eric's son with Italian model Lori Del Santo, was born on August 21, 1986 in London. The boy was the result of a brief but passionate affair between Eric and Lori at a time when he was still struggling with his broken marriage to Patty Boyd and other personal problems. Connor came into his life as a ray of hope, a chance for him to atone for his past mistakes and become a better father. However, fate took the boy away on March 20th, 1991, Eric's 46th birthday. Connor, then 4 years old, fell from the 53rd floor window of an apartment in Manhattan, New York, after a maid accidentally left the window open. According to a report by the New York Times at the time, the accident happened just minutes after Eric had picked up the boy to go to the zoo. He was standing in the hallway, waiting, when he heard Lori's screams and a panicked commotion coming from the apartment. Connor's death was not just the loss of a son, but the collapse of the entire world that Eric had tried to build to find stability in his life. In his 2007 autobiography, Clapton, the autobiography, he described the moment he realized Connor was gone as a nightmare that would never wake up. He recounted running down the street, seeing his son's tiny body on the pavement, and feeling as if his heart had stopped beating. "I couldn't believe this was happening to me. I'd lost everything, the booze, the drugs, the relationships, but nothing hurt as much as losing Connor," he wrote. The pain was compounded by guilt. Eric blamed himself for not being there for his son more, for letting years of addiction and career push him away from his role as a father. He once confessed that before Connor died, he had only just begun to build a relationship with the boy, trying to make up for the years he had been largely absent from his son's life. This grief changed Eric forever. It sent him into a long period of depression, where he locked himself away in his Surrey home, avoiding everyone and living in isolation. But instead of letting the pain completely defeat him, he turned it into the inspiration for one of his most famous songs, "Tears in Heaven." Written with Will Jennings and released on the 1992 album Unplugged, the song is a confession of a father who has lost his son, with haunting questions like, "Would you know my name if I saw you in heaven?" The song not only won a Grammy, but also became a symbol of loss and healing, touching the hearts of millions around the world. For Eric, however, every time he sang "Tears in Heaven," he relived that pain and had to face the fact that Connor would never return. Eric Clapton's greatest sorrow was not just Connor's death, but the complex set of emotions that accompanied it: regret, loneliness, and a sense of helplessness in the face of fate. He had lost many loved ones throughout his life, from his grandparents who raised him to friends like Jimi Hendrix and Duane Allman. But none had left such a deep mark as Connor's. It was not only a personal pain, but also a reminder of what he had sacrificed for fame and success, a price he never wanted to pay. Eric Clapton's career is a long journey of glory and darkness, a story of natural talent, great success, bitter failures, and relentless efforts that made him cry with passion and pressure. Considered one of the greatest guitarists of all time, Eric has left an indelible mark on music history through bands like the Yardbirds, Cream, Derek, and the Dominoes, and a solo career that spanned decades. But the road was never easy, and behind every note are tears, long nights of exhaustion, and moments when he almost gave up everything. Eric began his musical career in the early 1960s when he joined the Yardbirds in 1963 at the age of 18. With his virtuoso guitar skills and deep blues feeling, he quickly became a bright spot for the band, helping them create hits like For Your Love. However, he left the band after only 2 years, dissatisfied with the commercial direction, choosing to join John Mayall and the Bluesbreakers to pursue his passion for pure blues. The album Blues Breakers with Eric Clapton, 1966, was a turning point where he was dubbed God by fans for his powerful and emotional solos. This success opened the door for him to form Cream that same year, a power trio with Ginger Baker and Jack Bruce, where he reached the first peak of his career. Albums such as Disraeli Gears, 1967, and Wheels of Fire, 1968, with classics such as Sunshine of Your Love and Crossroads, turned Cream into a global phenomenon, transforming Eric from a talented guitarist into an international superstar. However, Cream disbanded after only 2 years due to internal conflicts and the pressure of fame. Eric continued with Blind Faith in 1969, but the band quickly floundered due to a lack of direction. His next big hit came with Derek and the Dominoes, where he wrote Layla, a masterpiece inspired by his unrequited love for Pattie Boyd, the wife of his close friend George Harrison. The album Layla and Other Assorted Love Songs, 1970, was initially a commercial failure, leaving Eric in despair. He once said in his autobiography that he cried for hours after the album was critically panned, feeling like all his hard work had gone down the drain. But over time, Layla became one of the greatest rock songs, a testament to his enduring talent. Eric's solo career began in 1970 with the album Eric Clapton, but the following years were overshadowed by drug addiction. He became heavily addicted to heroin in the early 1970s, living in seclusion in his Surrey home and almost giving up music. A comeback concert organized by Pete Townshend at the Rainbow Theatre in 1973 saved him from the abyss, and the album 461 Ocean Boulevard, 1974, marked a spectacular comeback with a cover of I Shot the Sheriff, reaching #1 in the U.S. It was his first time topping the Billboard Hot 100, a huge success after years of self-pity. The 1980s saw him continue to have success with albums such as Behind the Sun, 1985, and Journeyman, 1989. But the death of Connor in 1991 changed everything. The album Unplugged, 1992, with Tears in Heaven, not only won him 6 Grammys, but also introduced him to a new generation of audiences, affirming his status as a timeless artist. But Eric's career was also fraught with setbacks. After Layla, he faced the breakup of Derek and the Dominoes and the death of his close friend and musical collaborator, Duane Allman, in a motorcycle accident in 1971. He once said that when he heard the news of Allman's death, he sat in the studio with his guitar and cried all day, feeling like he had lost a part of his soul. The 1980s were also a period of struggle with alcoholism, which led to disastrous performances and apologies to audiences for singing out of tune or forgetting lyrics. Once, during a 1987 tour, he collapsed on stage drunk and later cried in the dressing room, ashamed of himself. Eric's efforts to overcome his addiction and resume his career were what made him cry the most. He spent months in rehab, dealing with the physical and mental pain of heroin withdrawal. He said that there were nights when he sat alone with his guitar and cried because he felt he was no longer worthy of music. After Connor's death, he threw himself into work to forget the pain, recording Unplugged in an emotionally exhausted state. He once told the press that every time he played Tears in Heaven, he had to hold back tears, but he couldn't stop because it was the only way to keep Connor alive in his music. Eric Clapton was not only a talented musician, but also an ambitious man who always set high goals to reach, despite personal difficulties and near failures. For him, success was not just about awards or fame, but about how he left his mark on music, overcame addiction, and became a better father and husband, things he constantly strived to achieve. One of the greatest achievements Eric always pursued was to become the greatest guitarist in the history of rock and blues. He achieved this when he was ranked second in Rolling Stone's list of 100 greatest guitarists of all time, behind only Jimi Hendrix, and was named by Gibson in the top 50 guitarists of all time. He is the only artist to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame 3 times, with the Yardbirds, 1992, Cream, 1993, and as a solo artist, 2000, a feat that no one else has ever achieved. For Eric, the recognition was not only a source of pride, but also a driving force that has driven him to continually perfect his guitar playing, from the soulful solos on Layla to the subtleties of Wonderful Tonight. Eric also aspired to bring the blues, his musical roots, to a global audience. He did this by collaborating with legends such as B.B. King on the album Riding with the King, 2000, which won a Grammy for Best Traditional Blues Album. He wanted to prove that the blues was not just a music of the past, but a living genre that could be combined with rock and pop to touch the hearts of all generations. The Crossroads Guitar Festival, which he has organized since 1999, is a testament to that effort, bringing together some of the world's best guitarists and raising funds for the Crossroads Center, the rehab center he founded in Antigua to help addicts like himself. Overcoming addiction is an achievement,